Hey, and welcome to the Dice Tower. I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
I'm Joey Evans.
I'm Z Garcia.
Today we're going to be taking a look at Stranger Things Upside Down.
What?
Coming to you from Simon. Just like that. If you know, you know, right? I'm so excited about this game. I remember when we saw it in Smorgasbord, right, in the news. I was so excited. So I was really excited to get it to the table. This box includes 2 different seasons, which play very similarly, but have a little twist to them to kind of fit the theme of the season, right? So before we go too far here, let's check out how to play.
First thing you need to decide when playing the game is if you're going to be playing against Season 1 on this side of the board or Season 2 on the back of it right here. So you'll set this up, and the main difference between the two is the different enemies you are going to encounter as well as your objective. On Season 1 you have the Demogorgon and you have some patrols moving around. Side 2 here you've got the tunnels and the Demodogs, and you'll be dealing with them instead. I'm going to, for this overview, show you a setup side on Season 1 here and how the game generally plays. So let's go ahead and get the game set up, and I'll give you a breakdown of what a turn looks like. The game is fully cooperative, and for the first season at least, our objective is to rescue Will. We do that when we clear these 3 stacks right here that say rescue Will above them. 1, 2, and 3 there. And we lose if, well, we take too long and have to reshuffle this action deck too many times, which is going to time out our act track. Or if any one player gets to the end of their fear track, then we have also lost. Every player has a hand of these 5 action cards randomly drawn from the deck. We've got a couple of allies that we could earn and a stack standing by to refill those spots when they're taken. And we've got a stack of items as well. So as you can tell, the board is split up into 2 halves, the Upside Down and then the Town of Hawkins. And we are going to be moving around, interacting with these different places. Every player's turn has 4 parts to it. Part 1 would be moving. Part 2, performing an action. Part 3, refilling your hand back up to 5. And then Part 4, revealing some scene cards, which are going to be bad things that happen, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start over here with Jim Hopper, who happens to begin at the police station. It tells you so right here. It also tells you their movement value. Most players are 1, most characters. Dustin there has a movement of 2. And then a special ability as well. It also reminds you that you can have up to 2 items max, and you can have allies as well. No limit on those. So Jim Hopper is going to be the start player. And on your turn, like I said, the first thing is to move. Let's take a look at these cards here in hand. So these cards are all going to have a value and possibly 2 other pieces of information. This hazard symbol means you'll be drawing more of the scene cards when you play these. And these walkie-talkies, which are going to give you a bonus number if you're sharing a space with another player. You've called for backup, all right? So the first thing, moving. So he can use the paths on the board to move around. If you move on these down here in the Upside Down, you gain 1 fear as you traverse those. And if you want to move further than what your movement value is, you can discard these cards to use the value for further movement, all right? So let's say he wants to go to recruit an ally. Let's say he wants to go get Benny Hammond. He can only move 1, but he could discard a card for an extra 1, so he's going to do that. Discard that one, he could go 1, and then 1 more from here. And now he can try to do that. This is part 2, which is performing an action. Actions come in 2 different kinds, contested and uncontested. Uncontested actions are going to be one of 3 different things. They're going to be gathering info, calming down, or getting an item. So if you gather info, you are going to be revealing the tops of some of these stacks out here. As you can see during setup, we actually revealed the top of every one of these stacks up here. So for example, this one has 2 tokens. The top one is face up. The police stack has 4 tokens, with the top one being face up, all right? And the rest of the tokens not being utilized right now are set aside. If you calm down, if you gather info, if you get an item, those are all uncontested. Gathering info reveals them. Getting an item lets you take an item. And then calming down drops down your fear track. If you're doing a contested action, you need to pass a test. So for example, Hopper here is going to try to recruit this character. We know that the top token here is a 4, and they go all the way up to 5, but there are fewer of those. And they go all the way down to 0. There's also fewer of those. Most of them are in the middle. So I know there's a 4, and the other one could be, well, anything. So he's going to try to pass a test right now to get that character. He's going to commit some of these cards to his value. He's going to commit that one, and that one, let's say, for a total of 6. And then we're going to reveal what the other token is. The other token is another 4. That means he does not pass because he needed to match it at least. So let's explain what would have happened if he had passed. If that had been a 2 or a lower number. Well, in that case, he recruits Benny Hammond. We clear these 2 tokens back to the pool. We shuffle them up. We take the next ally. We put them face up there. And we put a number of these tokens out to match the number on the ally. No longer revealing the top one. That was only during setup. If we fail, like we just did, we are going to take fear equal to the difference. I committed 6. The total was actually 8. So he's going to take 2 fear. And then we are going to shuffle up the stack fully and face down. We are going to remove one of these tokens and shuffle that back into the pool. And the leftover ones go back on the stack. Now, in this case, we're very, very lucky. We know that's a 4 because there were 2 4s there. But it's possible that you wouldn't know. If it was a 4 and a 5, then we don't really know which one's left, right? And having failed that, we are done with our action step. Step number 3 would be refilling our hand. So he was holding 1 card. He's going to draw back up to 5. And that's going to put us there. And now we have the final step, which is revealing these season cards. And those are bad, like I said. So we're going to reveal a number based on what act we're in. The act advances as we need to shuffle this action deck. Right now it's just 1. Beyond that, you also need to reveal further cards if you've played any of these cards that have that symbol there, whether you use them to move or to take a test. So we're actually revealing 2 of these, one at a time. The first one says, security, create a stack of 2 tokens in an empty Hawkins laboratory slot. If all 3 are filled, and they are filled, these are the lab slots, then instead each character gains 1 fear. Everybody at the table is going to gain 1 fear. Our second card is the Demogorgon feeds. Create a stack of 2 tokens in an empty Demogorgon slot. And if they were all filled, also bad things would happen. So we need to create a stack of 2 tokens here. This begins with 4 stacks already, each one with 4 tokens. So there we go. That's what a turn looks like. And now that this player is done, we would go to the next player who goes through all 4 of those steps. Moving, taking an action, refilling their hand, flipping over some bad cards. Let me try to briefly break down some of the locations so you understand what it is you are doing out here. So recruiting the 2 characters you've got, they're going to give you some special ability that you hang on to for the rest of the game, okay? If you get Callahan, for example, at the start of your turn, you can discard 1 token from the bottom of any Hawkins Laboratory stack. You can do that as long as you have him, which should be the rest of the game, all right? So those are the 2 ally slots. We've got the lab with 3 spots. Every time you clear one of these, you can, from now on, ignore one of those hazard tokens, and all 3 show the same thing. So if they're all 3 revealed, you can ignore up to 3 of those. The patrol stack over here has to do with these, which are very hard to see, but they are on standees. If you are with a patrol, or with the Demogorgon, who is over here, then you are going to, your option as an action is to fight. And you have to defeat that character in order to not take fear, not take damage, basically, okay? So clearing the patrol there is simply going to allow you to defeat them. They will move, and then you refill this back up to 4. So the patrols do not go away from the board. Demogorgon is similar, and the Demogorgon stacks are over here. When you fight the Demogorgon, you pick a stack, you reveal those tokens in there, and if you defeat the Demogorgon, you push them away 1. The trick with the Demogorgon stacks is that there's also some tokens in the game whose strength is tied to how many stacks exist in this area. And all of those begin during setup in these rescue will stacks. We'll get to that in just 1 second. There's also the Help 11 powers. There's 3 here and there are 3 here. These are one-time shots that are very, very powerful. Things like discard 2 of these Demogorgon stacks, or remove 1 patrol from the game, or look at all of the tokens in one of the Rescue Will stacks, things of that nature. And then lastly, really, we've got just the Rescue Will stacks. That's basically it. So let's take a look at one of these. Let's say I go over here to the upside down and I try to Rescue Will. We're going to take a look at what's in here. It's a 1, we've got that, we've got another 1, and a 2. So this seems pretty good. It's a 1 and a 2 word 3, but each of these, and again, they all begin in these Rescue Will stacks, the value of these is anywhere between 0 and 8 based on how many of these stacks there are. So it's actually 5 and 5 and 3 for a total of 13. If a couple of these stacks were gone, then the value suddenly drops by quite a bit, where each one is only 3. You see? So that's how that's going to work out. And once these are cleared, by the way, they do shuffle back into the pile and then may appear anywhere, and its value is still based on how many Demogorgon stacks there are. The entire stack of item cards here is going to allow you to get bonuses to different abilities. Like, for example, Gasoline here, +2 to fight, whether you fight the Demogorgons or one of the securities. +3 to Help 11. +3 to Investigate a Lab. +3 to Calming Down, so that you can get rid of more fear. And that simply adds to your running total when you make those kinds of tests. You can have up to 2 items, like I said, and if you would go above that, you simply need to discard the extras. And so that pretty much gives you an idea of what's going on. Keep playing cards for movement if you need, or to pass a test. This deck will run out, sometimes much faster than you think, though there's quite a few cards in there. And when that happens, you will reshuffle the deck and move that figure forward. And from now on, well, you're drawing more of these cards. These are always, like I said, bad. There is 1 card in here that will reshuffle the deck and does nothing bad to you. And in fact, if you're supposed to draw, say, 4 of these, and the reshuffle card is the first one you hit, fantastic, you get a lucky break, and you can stop. You just reshuffle it all together, and you are done. It is the next player's turn. So there you go. That is how the game is going to work. The other side, like I said, has a couple of differences. There's no Demogorgon. These security vans are not out there. So it's a little bit different, but the general flow of trying to pass these tests on the stacks is the same. Let's go ahead and go back up top.
All right, so that's generally how you play, right?
Yep.
Kind of the overview there. So first of all, I want to talk right off the bat about the theme, the thematic integration, because you know that's really important to me. How did you guys feel that it handled this IP and this theme and the setting of the board game?
I really liked it. First of all, I like the upside down, the underneath that you go down there, and then the fear that you will get as you travel around down there. But then, not to mention the 11 powers. I mean, when you could unlock those, like, I think it's her telekinesis or something, that can just remove 2 stacks just off the bat. I mean, that's pretty big. You want to kind of unlock her, but then thematically, it's like you can't just focus on her. You have to focus on everything else. I think the theme comes through a lot more than I thought it would with this.
Yeah, I think the trick with something like this is always, where do you draw that line as a designer between being faithful to beats and moments in a show like this,
right,
and having a clean mechanical game that's going to be easy to play and just enjoy as a game. I do fear that a lot of people are going to go, oh, it's like a bunch of stacks. It's like they made Stranger Things into a bunch of like math stacks.
And that's a good point, because like I like thematically the whole first season you're rescuing Will, but to rescue Will you just have to remove a couple of stacks.
Yeah.
So you can get caught up in that too, because I completely agree, because at the end of the day, you're removing stacks.
See, I would disagree. I would say, I would disagree a little bit. Yes, you are physically removing the stacks. I get that. But in order to rescue him in season 1, you have to really manage the Demogorgons.
You do.
Because of those tokens.
Big time.
So it's not just removing the stacks. You have to play it and get in it enough and take care of those Demogorgons so he is rescuable.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. So my point being, I'm not coming down on the thematic sort of integration with mechanisms. I'm saying I think some people are going to not see it or go,
I agree.
It's just like the math thing really bubbles to the top. But I like that the game is rescue Will, 3 stacks, you're done. But you need items to soften those tests.
Right.
You need allies to help you get things done. You gotta move around. You have to manage your fear or your bottom out.
Right.
There's all these things. You look at it the first time and you go, oh, boom, boom, boom. Okay, cool. But there are so many things you need to do. And I really think thematically, like mechanically, the things that are injected into the game are really interesting. Like chipping away at the Institute or whatever it's called.
Yes.
Makes your turns a little easier.
Uh-huh.
Just all these ideas, how you move, where you move, ending in the upside down is way more dangerous.
Yeah.
It is.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
you might just
That'll kill
flip
you
a card that goes, bam, -4 or 4th fear or whatever. And you're
Right.
like, ah.
Yeah.
And that's what I like the whole. You have to balance everything too. Because I remember
Yeah.
one game
Right.
I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get allies. But then you've got the Demogorgon just keep building strength and building
Right.
strength and all this, and like you've got to balance it all.
You're running out of
Right.
time as the deck
Right.
is
Because
reshuffled.
that deck.
That's and I like the asymmetric powers too. Everybody has like I think Will's mom is the one that gets like +1 on a rescuing Will.
Right.
You know, different things like that. And Dustin I think has a bike, so his movement is faster.
You're right,
Little
right.
things like that are really neat. They're small things, but I think it really wraps it up.
They're small, but because you have to do so many different things and balance so many different things, they feel really powerful.
They
Like I
do.
know when I played with Nancy, and she can move the baddies around, so she can push a Demogorgon 1 space to start her turn, or push a Van 1 space to start her turn, and that felt so powerful because I could really kind of control the board so that the other players could go and take care of the other things.
Right.
So they all feel the powers are very small, but they're very important in this, I should say, and
Right.
very kind of game changing. Like who you choose matters because you are trying to balance so many different things, and which again, back to the theme, I think is very. It ties very well with the theme because that's how it is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they kind of come together to do one thing, but then have to split up in order to manage everything, and it's just like a constant juggle, trying to do the best you can.
Right, right.
And it feels like that. That being said, that juggle, I think this leads to it being a very difficult game. Have you guys had that, or am I just a really terrible player? Like,
I think it's a pretty challenging game, absolutely,
It is.
yeah.
It's. I mean, I can see Pandemic. I can see Horrified. I can see
Yes.
a lot of things in it.
Yes.
But one thing I really enjoy on this is the push your luck. I love push your luck, right? So a couple ways. Number one, the stack. You're
Yes.
just, you're hoping, what are the odds? There's 5 or 4 in there. And then I think when I played with you, we were doing earlier, where you can just really get a lot of those event cards to be drawn because you're counting on that end of day coming up.
Yeah.
You're like, you know what? I have to draw 6. So I'm really hoping we're at the bottom of the deck. There's odds that we could just end it, but you're pushing your luck, because that's like, it could go either way because if you have to draw a 6, you're gone. That's game over.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you get that end of day, you just feel so good. You're like, yeah.
it leads to those really tense moments, right?
Yeah.
Where you're kind of holding your
Yeah.
breath and really hoping in that kind of that arc and that emotional swing of the game, I think is
Yeah.
really good.
I think the game does a nice job of letting you build up.
Right.
Where you start is definitely not where you're going to end. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
You start gathering items, and you can only have a couple of those, but then, even something as simple as +2 to whatever, and then you got the card that is +3 to that thing, and you're like, oh, don't mind if I do.
Yeah.
I'm going to swap this out.
Yeah.
And that's silly, but it's a hit. It's an endorphin hit. You're like, all right, yes, I'm better.
Yep.
Allies, I'm better. And so, halfway through the game, more than that, you are doing all these cool things, but the game doesn't front load that stuff.
Right.
You can slowly get there, and I really enjoy that. So I think the rhythm of the game is very good. Sort of the arc of the game is very good.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side of that, I am going to mention something that is one of my few negatives about the game, and that is that there aren't any difficulty settings in the game, and I'm not a fan of that. And that seems like it could have been easily
Yes.
implemented.
I think there's a couple ways they could have done it as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Right?
So it just seems strange that
Yeah.
there is one difficulty setting in the game. You know what I mean? Whereas all the other ones you mentioned, Pandemic,
Right.
there's difficulty settings. Horrified, there are difficulty settings. This one doesn't have that. There's one mode or one way in which you play. If your group finds the game too difficult, officially, there's nothing you can do about that.
Right. It's ripe for house rules. Like we said, there's a couple different ways with the deck manipulation, things
Sure.
like that. But yeah, you're going to have to house rule it, unfortunately.
And that is a good point because Horrified add, what are the 2 monsters, 3 monsters, whatever.
Sure.
And this one, and it makes you wonder also about replayability. Because you are playing that scenario. I play it a lot because you lose a lot, or I do at least. So it's like there's a lot of play in that box, and of course it's only 2 seasons too.
Right. And I do want to talk about that just real briefly before we get to final thoughts here. The 2 seasons. Talked at the beginning about how I think that they do change enough that they represent the different seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do have the same allies. It's a different deck of allies from 1 to 2, or some of them, because they're different characters, but maybe their power is a little bit different because they had evolved in the TV
Right.
show. And I think that is really, really well done. It's just a small deck of cards and the big deck of cards as well, the actual deck, I forget what it's called, the event deck.
The events,
The event deck, right. It's just those 2 things and the flip side of the board. And I think that was really well done because you do feel like you are kind of evolving through the story in that. But it's also similar enough that there's not more rule overhead because they just replaced that deck.
Yep.
Then all you're doing is new events are coming up, and therefore the demo dogs are responding differently than the Demogorgons did.
Right.
And I think that's so clean of a system to go from season 1 to season 2 that it does lead back into that replayability without excessive rules, changes, and overhead.
Exactly.
To learn.
Yeah.
So.
You don't really have to learn 2 games to play them both. It's the same game with a couple of tweaks.
Right. I
Which
think
I do
it's
like.
the way to do
Right.
it.
Yeah.
I do.
I think in the rule book, it's just a different setup page, and that's
Yeah.
it. The actual how to play is the same section of the book. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything else before we go into final thoughts here?
No, I mean I'm looking forward to more seasons.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely, yeah.
1 and 2, you're like, oh yeah. So does that mean there's a 3 and 4 coming?
What about 5? How long until 5? Right.
know, yeah.
So, Joey, what do you think?
I really liked it. I was hesitant because every time they throw an IP I like on it, you're like, this can be a cash grab or is this going to be a well thought out game? And I think this is a really well thought out game. I would enjoy this. This is one I'd like to own, and I could play it with really anybody, but it is challenging. So I would actually come in at an 8 for this. So I really do like this a lot. I think the theme comes through. And if you break it down, you're going to see you're removing stacks of tokens. But when you say, I'm going to go rescue Will in the Upside Down, if you get immersed in it, I think you're really, really going to enjoy this. And the minis are great. We haven't mentioned those at all, but the minis are incredible. It's Simon, so of course they are.
So I'm actually going to counterpoint that and say one of my negatives is the minis.
You don't like the minis?
I think the Demogorgons and the Demodogs are really well done, but the actual characters, I think they're very good mass market kind of miniatures. So I don't know. I think that the
You're
actual
a painter, though. You look at the details.
Ask your wife; she'll tell you. She'll tell you what it is. So I'm coming in really high on this. I'm going to come in at a 9. I know I was going into this very excited, but like you said with the IP, definitely holding my breath at the same time. Most of the dings for me are cosmetic things. I wish the minis were closer to what I expect from Simon, in the actual characters, and I wish the insert wasn't so crappy. Like it has the 4 squares that you use to track your fear, they don't fit in their own slots.
Right.
So it's just like little things like that. It's like, man, come on, there's not much to this. But other than that, it is difficult. I do wish there were house rules as well, but that are not house rules, I'm sorry, difficulty settings. That's something that I can implement easily, though. I appreciate the variability of it between the 2 seasons. I also appreciate the vision of where I think it's probably, or hopefully coming if the game does well, seasons 3 and 4. That's not a spoiler, that's just speculation on my part. So
Right.
I'm really enjoying this. This is one that, because I like the IP, I really get into it. I enjoy the gameplay. I can see that connection to the show. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a connection to the IP, I still think it's a solid game with solid mechanisms to back it up. Very
Yes.
reminiscent of Horrified is what I
Yes.
was thinking
Yep.
right off the bat. Maybe, like you said, Pandemic as well. But to me, this is what I wanted Horrified to be.
Right.
So for me, I'm a 9.
All right, so for me, I don't have as much of a connection to the show as you do, and maybe you do as well. I've seen it, so I know what's going on, but I'm not like a Stranger Things fan. But thinking of this, you mentioned mass market, and I do think of this game as a mass market game, the new mass market.
Yeah.
These games that utilize intellectual properties well, but are accessible. That's the only thing that I could see as an excuse for doing away with difficulty settings. It's like just one more thing for folks that are not big board gamers to have to deal with. This is how it's set up every time. Just play it. You know what I mean? I'm also coming in at a 9. I really enjoyed it. Even, again, not being as big a fan, seeing this as a mass market kind of new game, utilizing that intellectual property really well. I don't have any issues with the components. But again, I'm framing this in a mass market kind of point of view.
Yep.
You know, could they have done more? Could this be produced more heftily? Yes. But that defeats the purpose of who this might be for, who the audience that this could reach. I am thrilled that there will be Stranger Things fans who are going to stumble on this game.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And they don't know a thing about board gaming past what they played when they were kids, or maybe what they play with their children.
Right.
Yeah.
You know? But stumbling on this, I think, is going to be a revelation. I really do. Is it a revelation to me? Not necessarily. I've played a lot of games. But I really, really enjoyed this game. I love co-op games anyway, and I think this one's doing some fantastic stuff. I really enjoyed it. So a strong 9 from me as well.
There we go.
I agree.
So that's been Stranger Things Upside Down. Thanks for joining us here. I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
I'm Joey Evans.
I'm Z Garcia.
We'll see you next time. Take care of the demo dogs. Watch out. They're rough.
It's a wolf.
I don't know.
You should watch the show.